Welcome to another episode of Canada Unpacked. I'm so excited for today. We have a story that was submitted by a listener about visitor visa refusals, which is just so on brand and on topic right now. I think it's everywhere. Refusals were always a thing, but they're definitely more frequent with the introduction of AI elements as well in IRCC processing. I'm excited to dive in, and my co-host Diandra is going to share the story. Hey, Diandra.
So this is a really interesting case because this listener has basically had a perfect storm of reasons why the IRCC would refuse a visitor visa.
Like every reason ever you could possibly get, you just had all of them.
It was awesome. It was just beautiful. The
Nothing's
refusal was
correct.
beautiful. Everything was just right there to refuse. So the listener emailed in and said that they went to school in an EU country and stayed after for work. So they are working in a European Union country on a visitor visa there. That workplace also has a head office in the US. And because of the type of work that our listener does, he gets paid from the US office. So
Interesting.
exactly. So you're staying in the EU on a visitor visa, but technically you're working in the US remotely,
Mm.
wants to come to Canada to visit a friend, right? And the visa was refused. According to the email, the visa was refused, and the officer said that they're not satisfied. You know, the normal language, they're not satisfied that you will leave at the end of your stay. And so that refusal came in. The listener also says that they reapplied and got refused a second time. And we all know these all count, right?
Hmm.
If there's a PR application later or a work permit application later, um, then all of these refusals will count towards that. You have to declare those.
Yes, always declare, but also once you have that first one, it's so hard to overcome, particularly if you're going at it alone. If you're just like, oh, I'll just try again, bundle it together, resubmit, you're going to get the same answer. You need to pivot and re-strategize, and honestly, in my opinion, get a legal opinion as well before you just DIY resubmit at post refusal.
Exactly, exactly. So this listener had two refusals already and is wondering, should I, they asked this question, should I like talk to an RCIC? How do I get this visitor visa approved? And I thought this was so interesting because, and I'll dive right in, because one of the main reasons, just like the officer said, they're not satisfied that you'll leave at the end of your stay, right? At the foundation, that's all it is. They're looking to make sure that this is just a visit and you're going to leave Canada and not overstay or stay in the country illegally. So in this case, the first thing that leapt out at me is, hey, you're, and I forgot to mention that they're living in the EU, but they're not a citizen or resident of the US. They're a citizen in a whole different country.
Okay, that was gonna be my question because he went to school in the EU and he's in the EU now, but like, is he a EU citizen? And is that why he's, EU roaming around? But he's okay somewhere else, and
No, a
yeah,
citizen
citizen of
of
somewhere
a
else.
completely different country, not the
Yeah,
US, not Canada, not the EU. It's in a completely different country. And
and he's essentially working remotely. If he's in Europe getting paid US, so like, what's stopping him from working like that anywhere in the world?
namely in Canada, right?
Hmm.
So that was my first thing that leapt right out at me. Like, you don't have enough ties to your home country to prove that if
Or even of residence. Like he's not even working there. He's getting paid by the US company.
exactly, and he's already on a visitor visa in the EU, right?
Hmm.
So lack of sufficient ties to a country, right? Like you're kind of all over the place. Like I said, it's like a perfect storm for a refusal.
Hmm.
And that's a big one that people downplay a lot, right? Like show that you have sufficient roots in one place so they know, hey, if we approve this visa, they have somewhere to go back to after and they won't stay in Canada illegally. So, ways to prove that you have roots, like do you own property? Do you have family and friends there? Like, what's your foundation there, right? Like, if most of your family is back in that country, then yeah, that's sufficient. That's pretty good evidence that you'll go back, right? Like, you have enough people and village and a village there that you'll probably go back.
The community, a sense of community. I
Yeah.
always like to think about like a pull, like what's pulling you back
Yes.
there, and it can be yeah, financial ties, assets, work, personal, social, all of that. Like I've had clients who are very involved with their church, and their church actually like writes a letter for them to explain how involved they are with that community and that sense of belonging they have there. And so it's so personal, but it can be very like you can really go outside the box with it. Like what is pulling you back to that's like where you specifically are right now.
That's right. That's right. And I think another piece of documentation and evidence that people don't give a lot of attention to, but it's such a good one. Like if you're working in that country, like get something from your work verifying like, hey, this person has taken this amount of vacation time. We expect them
Yes,
back. We expect
on
them to
this day.
report back to work on this date. So
Yeah.
that shows the officer, hey, there's a reason for you to go back. Just like you said, a pull back, you have to
Mhm.
report to work or you lose your income, right?
Yeah, and you've let them know, like, hey, I'm going on a 3 week holiday. It's like, okay, and we know that it's been approved, PTO approved, and this is the date you're expected back in the office.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big one. Like you need sufficient pull and ties to a country so that the officer can be reasonably assured that you'll leave at the end of the visit.
Mhm.
What are some that you've seen over the years, Barbara, like with visitor visas? What are some of the factors? Like what are the reasons that people get refused?
Ties to home country for sure, and it can be country of citizenship or country of residence. Because, like you said, this person has been there for a long time. I mean, they only have visitor status, but they studied there. So, are they involved in some clubs? The one really interesting thing, I did this like big course on it ages ago. So, a thing from IRCC is having a child that you're leaving behind isn't really that helpful. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where it takes one person to ruin it for everyone. So
Yeah.
there's been a history of parents being like, I've got a baby, of course I'm going to come back. And they don't go back for the baby. And so being like, I've got a child, of course they'll come back is not a, oh, of course they'll come back because there's been a history of people not returning. Still include it, but it's not like a, whew, I'm good. I'm definitely going to get approved because I've got a
Don't
toddler. And
count on
so,
that.
of course, they'll come back for the toddler.
Yeah, like don't count on like stating that I have a child. It's true
Yeah.
because there's a lot of I know, from certain countries there's a lot of people that, will leave behind their children with like grandparents or a spouse.
Yeah, or
Or
aunties, like, yeah.
yeah,
So they could come here and earn more money than they could in the home country and send it back to their child. So we certainly, there's been a history of that. IRCC is aware of that. So include it, but it's always like big picture. It's like, give me everything and then stand back and look at the whole thing. Like, so yes, the family ties, but it's not like I have a child, so they'll let me go on vacation in Canada.
yeah.
It's absolutely not the case. It's every single thing that we've already mentioned. So, really building out the picture. And then proof of funds. So, one interesting one I had ages ago was someone had quite a bit of funds and they got a refusal. They didn't know why. They came to us. And when we looked at it, they didn't translate their bank statement because they're like, well, the money is just numerical, but they need to be able to read the whole bank statement. So because it wasn't translated, when we picked up the officer's notes, it was as if they didn't provide a bank statement at all and they had $0, and therefore that was the refusal. In that case, a resubmission with translated bank statements would do. But so in this particular listener's case, did they provide proof of funds? Do you know? Did they kind of tackle that element?
No. And I think
Mm.
from the email was a lot longer than what I shared. I just kind of gave the overview, but I think a lot of what happened here is that they didn't take this application seriously enough, right?
Mm.
And that is another issue that causes refusals because people think, "Oh, it's just a visitor visa. I'm just going for a vacation." But if you need a visitor visa to come to Canada for a vacation, it's like any other immigration application. It's serious, and they're looking at all the factors. They're looking at the big picture, and they're weighing all those factors to make a decision. And so, if you don't take it seriously and you don't give them enough evidence and documentation to meet the criteria for them to approve, it's easy for them to reject it, right?
Mm.
super easy.
Yeah, and it's such a good point because if I think about, my travels and when I apply for a visitor visa to countries, it's often like really simple. It's like a copy of your passport, they make you take a picture of yourself, and then 24 hours later, you get an approval and you've got a visitor visa to, I don't know, Thailand or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think people just think it's just a very easy process. I actually remember when I first started working in immigration, when I shared it with my friend, like, oh, I work in immigration, people get, permits and visas. And she said, isn't that like really easy? I think because she was Canadian, so she was only used to, using a Canadian passport to get an overseas visa, which, yeah, that is really easy. It's like $30 and 24 hours later, boom, approved. Not the same thing for people wanting to come into Canada with who don't have that Canadian passport, who have a, overseas passport. So yeah, it's not a what's the word, just sort of a process where you just fill things out and of course it'll be approved.
Yeah.
It's really like stating your case, providing the evidence, and the ultimate decision is up to the officer. And another element of how serious it is having that first refusal is very hard to overcome. It's much easier to get that first approval, preparing an excellent application straight out the gate. Once you have a refusal, I would not DIY it past that. And I'm a big advocate of DIY and support, but that's something where personally, I don't think I've actually seen anyone on their own overcome a past visitor visa refusal.
Yeah, agreed. I have not seen that in practice, and I 100% agree with you. Like, after the first refusal, I would not do it by myself. Book a consult with an RCIC or an immigration lawyer and find out exactly what's going on, right? Like, it's not worth it to get a second or a third refusal. One, you're just wasting money, right?
Yeah.
You might as well spend the money on a consult with a professional that can tell you exactly what you might be doing wrong and guide you. So then you can submit like a thorough application or have that professional prepare the application for you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I wouldn't go any other way. And then with the proof of ties, like it's one thing proving the money you have, but also like it's a little bit of a lifestyle element of like, well, what are you going to do in Canada, right? If you're going to stay with your relative and they're going to write a letter saying they're staying with me, like they don't have to pay rent or utilities or anything, maybe just get their own groceries for the 2 weeks or something. Like that's totally different than if you're coming here and you're gonna rent out a penthouse suite in some swanky hotel or something
Yeah.
like that. And you had a really interesting way you approach those. I love that you mentioned the like sort of table and calculating like what are you gonna do and how much is everything gonna cost so that it's a nice match for your proof of funds.
Yes, I actually heard about this from an RCIC colleague that was formerly an IRCC officer. And the way she described it was that like she had an application in front of her for a visitor visa and it was so easy to approve because literally the applicant spelled out everything. This is how much my flight costs. I'm staying for 3 weeks. This is how much the hotel costs in total. Like mapped it out, showed like all of the attractions they were planning to visit and how much those cost. Like tallied out, food costs per day, like a kind of, like just an estimate of this is how much I'm going to spend on food per day and entertainment and all that stuff. Put it in a nice neat table with a total and then had the bank statements and support to show like yes I have enough money to support myself on the trip and it was like just I had never heard anything like that before and I was like that is such a well organized way to show that hey like this is my proof of funds like I can afford this.
Yes,
And
I can afford that. Yeah, I can
yeah,
afford this specific trip to Canada. And it also plays into because they want to know like why do you want to come here? What are you gonna do? You're
I
just gonna
was
sit
just
around do nothing? Are you gonna work without authorization? The biggest question IRCC is trying to, trickle into as they're reviewing all your documents. Like, why do you want to come here? What are you going to do? You know what like energy that's giving too? It's like when you travel with like a group of friends and there's always that one friend who's like, here's the itinerary. Here's what we're doing. Like you need to harness that energy, claim that energy in your visitor visa application.
yes, claim that like group trip planner energy because like you said, it's that table served a dual purpose. Like my colleague was able to see yes, this is proof of funds, but it's also a map of you telling us this is why I'm coming to the country, this is what I'm going to do, and like it answers the question of like, why are you visiting?
Yeah. Like, why are you visiting? What are you gonna do? So yeah, we've got things like, so we've got what's pulling you back home, what's, pushing you to come to Canada in the first place,
Yeah,
how are you going to pay for it? Those are like kind of the big three key things when it comes to a visitor visa
yeah,
application and submission. And then, yeah, our tip is always get a legal opinion if you do have a past refusal. Because in addition, you'd want the officer's notes. I as well would never resubmit without getting the officer's notes because you're going in blind. Like you have no idea really the like nitpicky details that the officer didn't like.
yes,
You also don't know what they did like, right? There might be some elements where they're like, okay, these are satisfactory, but XYZ, this is what led to me refusing. And so you know what to actually tackle and target,
yeah,
what to keep the same, and all of that. And an RCI can help you do that. I know Diandra specializes in
yes,
visitor visas, past refusals, and just like excellent immigration strategy as well. Because that's at the end of the day, it's what you need is a strategy to tackle this on.
yeah. And again, like people, like I said, people tend to downplay that visitor visa application because they feel like, "Oh, I'm just going on vacation, or I'm just going to go
Yeah,
visit."
I'm
Like,
going to a wedding. Of course, they're gonna let me go to a wedding or a funeral. And they're like, oh, no one's gonna refuse a funeral. Like that's dark.
but guess what? That leads to another great point that one of our colleagues brought up, right? You remember that TikTok we were talking about from one of
Yes,
our colleagues?
Lysandra.
Sandra brought up such a great point. The officers are also looking for evidence that the reason you applied in the first place still applies. Like in her example, she talked about somebody applying for a visitor visa to attend a graduation. But
Hmm.
because of processing times, by the time the officer actually touched the application, the graduation was over. So they refused it. So to Lisandra's point, you have to make sure that there's like more than one reason for you visiting. It's not just to go to a graduation, it's to visit family and friends, like maybe meet a new grandchild and spend time with them and all that stuff. You have to kind of flesh it out because with the increased processing times we're dealing with now,
Hmm.
it's quite possible you might miss that event. And in the case of something like a funeral, maybe the funeral's going to be over, but obviously you would probably still want to go and like be with your family and your friends and share that bereavement period and everything, even though the
Hmm.
funeral is already over. So you don't want them to refuse because the event is done. You want to give them solid other reasons that you want to come to Canada.
Yeah, because there's no arguing with the officer on that, right? If they're like, "Oh, you want to come to this graduation on July 25th?" Well, it's July 28th, so good news, you already missed it.
That's it.
Here's your refusal. It's like, okay, that was very logical. Yeah, you're welcome. You're like, thank you for this very easy visitor visa application. Refused. It's always like, I don't want to say they're leaning to refusals, but like, it's easier to refuse than approve, right? It's easier to be like, here's the one thing I don't like, or on to the next one kind of situation.
Yeah,
Obviously, like it's more complex than that, but I kind of, have that in my mind of like, I don't want to give them any reason, any doubts, anything that's like, oh, I don't
yeah,
know, refuse. Because yeah, it's easier to refuse and just move on to the next one because we know that they are absolutely bombarded with applications. The supply and demand is very unbalanced, and they're just sitting in an office somewhere, flicking through application after application after application. Like, make yours stand out, make it very easy for the officer to approve.
yeah. 100%. Those are some really really great points, and it's so cool to like kind of relate it to past experiences too, right? Like past cases we've worked on and everything. This was a really really interesting email in. So thank you to that listener for giving us that story and something to unpack today, because visitor visas are a huge topic. There's quite a few countries that need like that citizens need visitor visas to come. It's not just yeah, just fly over and go visit. So this was a really interesting topic and one that I was like, yeah, let's talk about this one.
Yeah, let's
Let's break
unpack
this
it.
one down. Yeah.
Yeah, no, amazing. I'll link Lysandra's TikTok as well. I cannot remember her handle. I should have looked it up before, but it's at Lysandra something something. But she has an amazing TikTok. She's an incredible colleague. And then Diandra as well. You are the CEO of Harbour Cave Immigration, a Canadian immigration consultancy that has a specialization in visitor visas and past refusals. So that'll be linked as well. If anyone needs support, highly recommend Diandra and reaching out. Otherwise, we will see everyone in the next episode. And thank you, Diandra, for sharing the story with us.
This one was a great one. Thank you guys. See you next time where we'll unpack some more immigration stories.
Bye.